Let's discuss this with James Dorsey. He studies the Middle East and religious conflict at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. James, thanks so much for speaking to us. Why do you think Iran is now targeting energy facilities? Because these aren't U.S. military bases. These belong to those countries.
I think what you saw in the initial phase of the Iranian response to the U.S.-Israeli attack was to try and prove to the Gulf states that the U.S. military facilities on their territories were not going to defend them against an attack, but in fact were one reason why they ran the risk of being attacked. What you're seeing now in the second phase is the targeting of energy infrastructure in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, basically to raise the stakes. This goes to the heart of Gulf economies. It goes to the heart of concerns in the international community. You just saw Qatar announcing that it was halting the production of liquid natural gas, LNG, and associated products. That is a major development that's going to affect the global economy. And that's what this is about.
Is this raising the stakes to also force those U.S. allies in the Gulf who are now affected to pick up the phone, to speak to Washington, to ask them to stop this, or at least call for a ceasefire?
They've been on the phone not only since the U.S.-Israeli strikes began, but in advance of that. They did not want this to happen and went out of their way to try and pressure the United States and Donald Trump not to attack Iran. Obviously, that pressure didn't work. What the attacks on the Gulf states do, and particularly the attacks on the energy facilities, that raises the stake and raises the pressure not only on the Gulf states, but via the Gulf states on Donald Trump.
What do you think the Gulf states are now going to do? But surely they do have leverage on the United States to say, look, something needs to be done to stop this.
They have leverage, but we're also seeing that leverage is limited. The Gulf states were very clear in the weeks running up to this conflagration. They were very clear that they did not want to see a military engagement. They were very clear that they wanted a diplomatic engagement. You saw the Omanis being the mediators in this. So that's been their position all along. It's obviously now been reinforced by the eruption of by the U.S.-Israeli attack and by the Iranian response. And it puts the Gulf states in a bind. On the one hand, they have security-wise nowhere else to go but Washington, and they certainly will do that. They've seen, to a degree, the limits of their influence in Washington, despite the billions of dollars that they have agreed to invest in the United States in artificial intelligence and other sectors of the economy in the last year. But on the other hand, and they also have to be seen to defending themselves. You saw the Gulf Cooperation Council foreign ministers last night talking about or keeping the option open of a military response to the attacks. The problem with that is the Gulf states don't want it to be seen to be attacking Iran alongside the United States and Israel.
Yeah, they've got to really look carefully at how they play this. One of the groups in Yemen, the Houthis, they have yet to get involved in any way in this particular conflict. But do you think if that does happen, what could we see play out, particularly when it comes to Red Sea access? Because during the war on Gaza, the Houthis did block that. And now we've got the Strait of Hormuz, which is also practically closed. This has major implications globally.
It basically reinforces, or whichever way you want to put this, it reinforces the effect of the Iranian strikes against Gulf energy infrastructure. With other words, if you see a closure of the Strait of Hormuz against the backdrop of damaged energy facilities in the Gulf, shutdown of production, some 20% of the world's energy resources flow through the Strait of Hormuz. particularly Asia, would be significantly affected by that. So all of these are building blocks in what the Iranians would like to do, which is increase the pain on the Gulf, increase the pain on the United States. For example, with the in the last 24 hours, the death of three U.S. service people. All of that is designed to get the Americans, if you wish, to return to the negotiating table on equitable terms.
James Dorsey, Middle East analyst, thank you so much for breaking that all down for us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.